Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Seneca Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Today's episode is brought to you by Your Clear Next Step in the Changemaker Certification Program.
Would you like to save time by solving the right problem sooner with a realistic and measurable plan? Reduce overwhelm by finding more sustainably productive ways to work? Improve employee morale by creating more positive workdays from within? Stay competitive by tightening your turn or increasing your agility in adapting to changing customer demands? If you said yes to those things, then we have the solution for you.
Interested in becoming a changemaker? Give us a call at 515-442-0545.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to another edition of the Even Better podcast. This is your host, Seneca Waugh, and I am so delighted that you chose to join us today. Thank you for that. And I am just thrilled to welcome our guest today, Brian Robbins. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today.
Seneca, thank you very much. It's good to be here today.
It is such a delight to have you. And for those of you who are listening who don't know Brian, you are in for a treat. Brian has been a friend and a colleague for years. It's just such a joy to call Brian friend and to have known him. He has been a leader and a career professional in the Des Moines area. I've known him in this space. He's mostly been focused here, and he works in a lot of different industries. We encountered each other in financial services, but I know he's also been in publishing, in agriculture, in healthcare, in technology services, in retail. So when I first met Brian, one of the things that struck me immediately about Brian is his approachability and his collaborative style. So the things that I know about Brian is that Brian, when you interact with people, you immediately put them at ease. So when someone is in your presence, they know that it is safe to be in your presence. And one of the things that's just the tiniest bit disarming about you, I'll confess this, is that when someone when someone doesn't know everybody and we're in a room with Brian, you kind of look around and you're like, so who else is in this room? Because you rub elbows equally comfortably with the top of the top and the front lines, and you're equally charming and disarming and comfortable and authentic with everybody. And you don't pretend to be anybody else, and you don't put on airs, and you don't brown nose, and you're not holier than or better than with anybody anywhere. You're just Brian. And it's a little bit disarming for some of us, because we're like, well, who else is in the room here? So we can be authentic around Brian, but who else is here? Because you're you around everybody, and everybody else is like, well, but who else is here? Because not everybody is as authentic as you. And it's really, really wonderful. You build such great teams, Brian. It is such a joy to work with you and be around you.
Well, thank you very much, Seneca. That was very generous and gracious of you to share. So, but it's good to hear that. As you lead through your professional life, you hope that you are always putting the best version of yourself forward, and you're being conscious of who you are, who you're with, and how you need to be in that situation. But it's always easiest if you're just yourself, and you're just the person you're supposed to be, and you treat everyone the way that you should treat them. And so to me, it's real simple and just comes naturally. But that's kind of how I was raised, and that's just stuck. So I need to give my hand to my parents for helping me do that.
I love that. Love that. Thanks, Brian. So we're here today to talk about leadership in business and life. And I love this as we pause and kind of set this up a little bit. I'm having to tell you a little bit about your story and your journey and how you chose this as a topic. And the part that I want to weave into this a little bit too is our listeners. So not all of them are in business per se, right? Some of them are in retail spaces. Some of them are in corporate spaces. Some of them are in small organizations. Some of them are in caring for their families, and but we all encounter others. We're all in life. We're all going through this world of life together. And
Certainly.
we all need to figure out how we lead others and how we lead ourselves and how we influence others around us. So as you share this topic and kind of your journey, I'm interested in, as our listeners listen, what are they going to be taking away from this? And is this applicable just to a little tiny niche audience that has to be in corporate America at a particular moment in, winter of 24-25? Or is this more universal? Is this a bigger picture, bigger topic? Help us tell the story and who this message is for.
So really, this can apply to anybody, and that's the beauty of it. And it's super simple. But there's three main tenets that I'll talk about. And the first one is that leadership is a learned skill. Granted, some people maybe have some natural abilities that help them there, but you learn to be a good leader. It's not something that everybody just naturally does. The second part would be that leadership is omnipresent. And what I mean by that is that whatever you're doing, wherever you're doing it, there is a leader in the room or in the space where you are. And maybe sometimes it doesn't come out, but again, they're always there, and you might be that person, and you just don't know it yet. So, and then the third part is that leadership is critical, because every group does need a leader. Because if nobody leads, then nothing typically happens, or it doesn't happen the way it should. If everybody tries to lead, then you typically have a lot of conflict, and then you still don't necessarily get done what you need to get done. So, and again, there's lots of different ways to think about that, but those are the three main tenets that I would say that I think are critical for us to talk about today.
Okay. So, and if I hear you right, this is pretty universal. This is going to apply to all of us, kind of wherever we are.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So tell us, how did you come to pick this topic? Why is this so important to you?
So over the course of my career, in my performance reviews and things like that, I'm always told that I'm a good leader, and I'm always given good examples of how I've been a good leader, which is great, and it's good to know those things, because I've been fortunate to have good leaders tell me what to do more of and what to do less of. And I've also had some bad leaders where I learned, okay, I don't want to be like that, or I don't want to be perceived that way, or think that person never should have been a leader, because they're not comfortable with it. So that's always in the back of my mind. And I'm watching for leaders all the time when I'm working or in social situations. But was catching up on The Chosen, the series about the life of Jesus, and was watching that earlier this spring, and just watching the stories and how well Dallas Jenkins, the guy that produces it and writes it, has taken the stories of the Bible and Jesus and done a good job of making them in a more modern sense. I mean, the settings still look biblical and all that, as they would back at that time, but just the way that he casts the characters and the way they interact, they've been updated in a way that you can relate to them as if you're watching a movie. And so I was really paying attention a lot to the characters. And the thing that I noticed is that the gentleman that plays Jesus, and I can't think of his name right now, but he's perfect for this part. But he displays this very even-keeled, very kind, very approachable person that is always there to help, always has a kind word. And even when he's giving, I won't call it criticism, but he's giving constructive direction to the disciples, for example, he does it in a very loving way. And sometimes he frustrates them because he doesn't answer their question directly. Instead, he just tells them, try X. Or a part that I laughed about a lot is that he uses the word soon a lot. And they'd be like, well, when's this going to happen? And he'd be like, soon. And the disciples get frustrated because they start talking about, well, soon like next week, or soon like 200 years from now. And he would just smile at them. So he's working on them to build, faith and trust. So, but that's where this all came about. I was watching that series, and I realized that as I watched it, that he was being a good leader, and he was building a group of leaders in the disciples.
Love it. I love it. Okay, so you've got three basic tenets, and you said it's a learned skill, you said it's omnipresent, and you said it's critical. So let's start with those three. So leadership is a learned skill. What do you mean by this? Let's unpack that a little bit.
So, first of all, we all have the traits that we're born with, and we probably inherited those from parents. Some of those might come about in our how we grow up and the people we're around. And some people are just good leaders. They actually are outgoing. They understand how to ask questions. They know how to engage others. They know how to support others, and it just comes natural to them. But some of us also have to maybe have some of those pieces, but how do we refine those skills and use them effectively in our world? And so I think that a lot of us learn a lot of those skills over time. And again, it's based on our experiences that we have ourselves or with others, we learn from. I was fortunate enough to have a really good leader right out of college. And he was very influential on a lot of things early on in my career because he made points. He was from the South, and so he had that drawl in his voice all the time, and he talked to me, and he was very fatherly. But he always made really good points, and those things still stick in my head today because they were so strong and hit me at a point where I'm starting my career. So I think that those situations bear heavy on all of us because we've all had those situations, but also, had leaders that I've had challenges with, and I've learned from those as well to help shape how I want to be as a leader or what I look for in my leader. And then finally, I think that part of it's motivation. You have to kind of decide, do I want to be a leader? Do I want to be a good leader? And what's my purpose in doing so? And so I think those are important questions for people to ask of themselves. I think sometimes people want to lead because it leads to a promotion, more income, that type of thing. But you really have to be the right mindset to be a good leader and be motivated by the right things. You need to be able to put other people ahead of you, not just give direction. And so it's a balance sometimes because sometimes you have to do both. But I think those are the three things when I say that it's learned that I think about.
Yeah, I love your idea about motivation. And I look back to early in my career, there was a moment, my first leader in my first real job after grad school. And I was waiting for my teaching position to open up, which never did open up. And that's what got me into professional project management. That's what got me into IT project management all those years ago. But it was this moment where the leader did something that was such an example of great leadership. And I won't tell that story now, but it was such an example of great leadership. And it was so inspirational to me that not only did it move me forward and progress me in my career, but it was pivotal. It was that moment that made me say, that right there, I want to be a leader like that. And I remember that moment, not only because it put me on the path to project management and it put me on the path towards the career that I wound up eventually taking, but it made such a profound impact to me because I said, that's the kind of leader I want to be. I want to be a leader like that. So absolutely love your point about motivation. If you're not, we can be motivated to be good leaders when we see someone else who does that so very well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
On the flip side, I think about a few years back, I was coaching leaders, and I think in the same time span, I had 3 or 4 leaders that I was coaching who all said, "Yeah, this is not. Nope, this is not for me. I don't. No, I don't want to be a people leader. Nope. And if you're not motivated for it, then please exit."
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and it's good for people to have that realization. And the sooner they have that realization in their career that, hey, I'm better off as an individual contributor and I'm okay with that, be more successful and more happy in their whatever their choosing is by doing that.
Yeah. Oh, good stuff. Okay, so let's when did you discover that leadership was a skill that you already possessed some natural abilities in? And do you keep growing in that space, Brian?
I think I first saw it in high school.
Mm.
I was typically in a leadership role in high school. And that continued through college. I was always an officer in the house I was in. I was an officer in the clubs I was in. Always one of the people that was helping line up events, speakers, whatever. So, just always been there. And then after graduation, got involved in community things as my family grew, got involved in school things. Just being involved in my community, or whatever that community is and wherever it happens to be, always doing those things.
Yeah, you bet. And then as far as just a learned skill, it's not something that you master once and you're done, right? We keep
No,
growing.
no. Frankly, one of the hardest leadership roles I've had was not even related to a job. It was related to managing volunteers for a RAGBRAI event, because literally needed like 200 volunteers all in a day. And, you're relying on people that have no other motivation to be there other than you just hope they show up to do things and do the things that you need them to do. And that can be a challenge sometimes, because people that you thought were going to be there don't show. And well, how do we adjust to make sure that that gets covered? And those are the kinds of things sometimes that are difficult because you don't have as much control. You just don't. But you go into it kind of knowing that, okay, this is probably going to be a little chaotic. And you have to be okay with that, because it's not going to be perfect.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, so let's get to your second point there. Leadership is omnipresent. It's everywhere. Let's talk about that.
So, again, lots of formal and informal leadership roles over the course of 30 some years. Um, One thing's always clear, though: we choose to lead, and we do it all the time. And so, someone like me, you just know that if you drop me into a room full of people, I will lead somehow. Now, I might not be the only leader in the room, but you can count on the fact that I will be leading somehow. Um, but that can be true wherever you are. It could be in a professional organization. It could be in a volunteer organization, like some of the stuff I've done through the school. It can be at your church. Churches need leaders,
Mhm.
because typically my experience is that a lot of people will show up and want to help, but nobody really wants to organize and lead. It's kind of, there's fewer people that want to do that. And that's the same thing with schools, and all of that. But here's a thought that I think that people need to always make sure they think about: families. Families need leaders, because in this day and age, you have to be super vigilant about how is my family being led through the world that we live in today. There are so many influences. How do you help maintain the right perspective of things through all those influences and events that we have, to make sure that our families are safe, that our children grow up to be good, solid, strong individuals? It's a challenge, but that's where sometimes your leadership skills are the most important, and maybe the most difficult to perform because of all the emotion that comes with those relationships.
Yeah. So as you're talking about these things, businesses might be less obvious because there are some formal roles and formal titles that come up with this. But in many of the other places that you're talking about, professional associations, volunteer organizations, a family, church, schools, leadership doesn't have to have a title with it.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. Sometimes you just need somebody to decide who's going to assign who's doing what in the soup line. It's just somebody taking charge and not being afraid to make some decisions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and it's, again, I've been in that situation so many times where I'm thinking, okay, who's in charge? If I don't see that somebody is, I'm going to be. So, uh, again, it's always hard because you don't want to be bossy. So that's where I try to combine my personality of being approachable and that type of thing, and it's saying, hey, let's just do this. Would this work? And try to make it more of a suggestion rather than a command. So,
There was a moment not all that long ago in a volunteer situation where there was a leadership vacuum, and that you've been in one of those, right? There's people gathered, there's a thing that needs to be done, and no one has stepped up, and there was an individual who had ostensibly organized the thing, had scheduled the thing, and so perhaps they were to have been in charge, but being in charge isn't really the thing that they might do. And then there was another person in the room who could have been in charge, but taking the lead is not their natural style, and this is not, they don't have the appetite for the kind of work that we were doing in this particular moment. And I have a strong appetite for taking charge and the kind of work that we were doing in this room. And another person that I know and love dearly was in the room, and that person also has a strong appetite for the order that was needed in this room. And so there were a couple of us kind of sweating it out, watching what was happening, like what was going to happen. And the one of the individuals who kind of ostensibly could have but didn't really want to step up, wasn't their place to do so, but they had enough influence in the room that they could say, well, let me offer this. What if we just put Seneca in charge of this? And they just gently said, well, Seneca's really good at these kinds of things. What if we just let her direct this? And there was just this relief that came over the original organizer, like, oh, because I don't know how to do this. This is just a relief for me, and relief from the other people in the room who knew process and knew that by golly, Seneca knows process and can just take this and run. And relief for me because I'm like, oh, hot diggity, I can just be who I am. And it was just this really beautiful moment where this individual recognized what was needed in the room and had just enough leadership to say, let's let this person do what they naturally do best, and let all of us stop suffering.
Absolutely. That was very wise.
It was really, really beautiful, and we got done in record time.
So yeah, I think again the point here is that everywhere you go and wherever you are, there's always somebody that's leading, and you think about even some of the situations that we've been in over recent years where things happen that aren't planned in a crowd or whatever, and there are people that still have to step up and lead and make sure others are safe that don't know what to do. And so, sometimes you don't know there's going to be a leadership opportunity until it's like right now. And you have to make a quick choice. Are you leading or are you not? So, but yeah, it's always there. And I think the opportunity is always there. And it's one of those things that I encourage people that are good leaders, always be ready. You never know when you're going to be called.
Yeah, just be ready to step up. So let's get to your third point, because I think that's really salient here. It's that leadership is critical.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, as we're summarizing these, leadership is critical because it really drives teams to get their outcomes or their goals accomplished. And so it's that person that kind of keeps a good definition around what is it that we're doing. It's the accountability of people to do what they're supposed to do. It's helping look ahead of the group to make sure that you're removing obstacles. It's talking to the group on a regular basis about what they need, what concerns they have. So think about all the servant leadership aspects that come with that. You're not just making decisions and driving, you're also taking time to really support the people and understand how to help them and help them be better at what they do. And again, I think this applies in so many different forms, all the way again from civic organizations, church organizations, schools, again, families. It's important that somebody is leading and not just letting things drift.
Yeah, that someone's driving us forward, someone's moving us towards our goals. We're not just floundering, we're headed somewhere.
Right. And in work, we don't usually have these goals or outcomes. They're written down somewhere, right? They're in a document someplace or in a system. But like in our families, they're not. I mean, some families are very disciplined, maybe, and they have some key things that as a family they want to accomplish, and maybe they do write them down or put them on a board or something. But I'm guessing most families don't. But yet there's still some unspoken things that need to always happen. And so how do we make sure those things happen? And so you got to talk about them, and you got to make sure that everybody understands what their role is in getting to that outcome. And so it's just, again, having good open conversation and helping others figure out how do they help get to the end game.
Yeah. I love it. So as you were thinking about these, and you said this is initially this whole idea for today's conversation came to you from watching Chosen. So are there some parallels? Are there some specific examples of leadership there that you would call out?
Yes, and so I think that most of what I remember from the show that stood out to me was how Jesus worked with his disciples. So basically, for those that aren't familiar with the series, it chronicles the life of Jesus as he comes towards the end of his life. And there's a lot of the stories from Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John that you will experience in the series. But as he collected the disciples, he knew that he was collecting people that he had to turn into leaders that would be the first leaders of the Christian church. And so he was not easy on them. I mean, they often had to give up jobs, families to just follow him. And there was no pay. They were lucky if they got to eat or had a place to sleep. And so they were giving up a lot on faith. And so that was, the price of joining him. But often they would fight amongst themselves about how something should happen. And there were times that he would put somebody just in charge and say, Peter, you decide. And so it was always interesting to see kind of how he would do that. But there were other times that he would just let them argue and figure that they'll get to the answer, or he'll just give them a couple of clues and just let them go for it. So, but at the end of the day, he was preparing them. And so I think that the thing that I saw a lot of times is that he asked a lot of questions instead of just giving direction. And so he let them arrive at the answer by just asking them questions. And again, sometimes they struggled to get to the answer. And you can see sometimes the frustration in Jesus's face. He's being patient, but he's like, oh, I cannot believe that you guys don't get this. But he wouldn't give them the answer either. He wanted them to arrive at it. And so he's forcing them to think critically about themselves and the situations they're going to be in. So, but yeah, I think the lesson there is that you set a good example and you ask people questions and you coach them to the things. So, so that was one. Another was when he's washing the disciples' feet for Passover as they're coming to the dinner. He's taking time to wash each of their feet, and he set an example of what he wants the disciples to do for others. And so this is like the ultimate act of servant leadership back in that time, is washing somebody's feet for them. And you think about it, their footwear back then was not anywhere close to what we have today. Your feet were always dirty, smelly, and so having your feet washed was kind of a thing, right? So, and for someone to take their bare hands and wash them for you was even a bigger thing. So, huge sign of respect and support. But I think that again here, the lesson is that if you act selflessly and take care of other people, they will follow you, as well as they will have the example then that they should be that way as well. And then there was also the part of the story where he's taking time to connect with a woman who touched his robe as he was walking through the crowd. So without getting into a lot of details, he's going through the crowd. He's trying to go to someone's home and save them. They're dying. And the guys asked Jesus to come to his home and to save them. He stops to take care of this woman in the street that he has no knowledge of. And the synagogue leader is like, I need you to come with me to go heal my daughter. And he won't do it. He's going to stop and take care of this woman. And the thing that really struck me about it is that, number one, the woman had faith in him and just was absolutely certain that he was going to be able to help her. So that there was that part of it, because she was being relentless in chasing him. But the second part is that he took time to not just heal her physically through touch, but also spent a moment then to connect with her and heal her spiritually and make her feel seen and important. And again, as a leader, to be able to do that in the moment, even when you have other more pressing things, to me, that was like the ultimate sign of a good leader, that he takes time to see people, connect with them where they are, and make sure that they feel taken care of before you move on to whatever the pressing matter is that you have. And so that was like, wow, that is just a skill. There's probably classes on that today on how to do that.
Yeah.
But, and ultimately for those that haven't seen it, he did get to the synagogue and helped, as he was supposed to. But I think the key here is that you got to have faith in those who lead us. And again, with some guardrails, of course, but you have to have faith in your leader and build trust with them. But also take time to connect with people. It's hard to build relationships if you don't take time for people, if you don't take time to focus on them. And if for those of you that have conversations with me or had conversations with me in the past, I'll spend more time asking you questions about you than I will allow you to ask questions about me, because I would rather talk about you. And that's just, to me, that's what's important. It's not about me. So, but anyway, those were the three examples of scenes that kind of, as I was watching the series, where I was like, well, I think these are all great examples of leadership. And I think we need to talk about this.
Yeah, they're just really, really great things to pick up on, because I love that you picked up on the coaching and the asking questions rather than the telling. One of the classes that I teach is on coaching and coaching in the moment. And a slide that I have up on the screen when I teach this is this just quick reminder that coaching is not the same as telling, right? We don't coaching is not the same as telling. You don't tell someone what to do. That's not coaching. It's inviting someone else to think about it, inviting someone else to understand. It's asking questions so that they get to the learning. It's setting up the learning opportunity in their mind based on something that's already happening or has happened or is happening in the moment. And how many times some of them are shown in Chosen, and some of them are there in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John's accounts for us to read. How many times is the story there, or the happening there, and Jesus asks the questions, right, for us to stop and think about. So it's a question. And so I love that you picked up on that in Chosen. That's a coaching is such a great leadership skill. It's not telling the other person, here's what you should do, go and do this. It's, well, what do you think? What?
Right.
Wait, yeah.
Use your brain. So
is there
yeah.
no one else here? Is there no one left to throw a stone at you? What yeah, what are you picking up from this moment? Are you picking up what I'm picking? Oh, it's beautiful. Love that one. And the servant leadership, in Simon Sinek's work, Leaders Eat Last, the messages that he's talking about in servant leadership, resurfacing that, and the work of servant leadership, of course, has been around for decades, and it's sort of fallen off trend a little bit. We got a little off center, off kilter as a society again. We got a little me focused for a hot minute, and so I'm anxious for us to resurface the value and the necessity to serve others and put others' needs first, because of that's what we should be doing, and that's what a good leader does. And so I'm super glad you surfaced that one too. Yay.
You're welcome.
And the human connection, right? We're never too busy. We can't possibly be too busy to connect with others. We can't possibly be too busy to make that human connection and make sure that someone feels seen and heard.
Well, the thing that I always remind people is that at the end of the day, we all have the same goals. We're all trying to earn a living, take care of our families and our loved ones, maybe put some money away to do things we look forward to doing someday, and let's make that journey as enjoyable as possible for everybody that's with us. It's not just about us, it's about everybody that's on the plane with us. And let's also keep that in mind, that when people are given circumstances that are challenging or difficult, that they're also trying to do the same things that we're trying to do. And we just need to keep that in mind and figure out how do we support them. And sometimes it's not doing anything in particular other than just being kind. And that's not hard to do. It costs nothing, and it's super non-stressful. And actually it makes you feel better when you do it. So I recommend just being kind.
Yep. So many things you can be in this world. Why not be kind? Indeed. So what are some takeaways? What can we be taking away from this, Brian?
So I think there are four things. Number one, use your God-given talents to become a better leader. If that's what your motivation or desire is, then definitely do that. Continuously learn through observation, interaction, and reflection. And so anytime you have an interaction that feels like it might be a leadership moment, your words, think about it. How did it go? What would you do differently? If that situation came up again. And it's just like sharpening any tool. You just get better at it with time and practice, but you never become a master. I mean, I'm almost 60 years old and I still learn how to do things better. So um, I would say the second is always be a leader regardless of the setting. The more you do it, the stronger leader you are. So again, just keep sharpening those tools and do it every opportunity you get. There will be times that you'll be like, oh, I really don't feel like having to do this, or that, we all have our days, right? But I always challenge myself to look past that and say, what's the right thing to do here? How do I bring my talents to the group and do the right thing? The third one would be understanding the importance of being a leader and how it affects others. And so again, do not underestimate how your actions are viewed by others. So Seneca, in your opening, you talked a little bit about me and kind of my presence. That's what I'm talking about. Your presence that comes across as being a leader, that's very important in a career setting or in any social setting for that matter, because that creates that perception of who you are and what kind of person you are. And all of us can always use as much positive in that column as possible. So I don't think anybody's looking for less of that. But always think about that you are always on the stage somehow, and somebody is watching you.
Mhm.
And the final one I would suggest is reflect on your faith and how you are provided with so many examples from others, or if you're somebody that likes to study the Bible, definitely take time to study, because I think there are a lot of good lessons there. And I'll say at a minimum, watch The Chosen, because if you're interested in understanding more about the stories of Jesus, and then trying to see some of the same parallels that I'm seeing as I watch through the series, I think it's kind of fun to see that and see how many things that happened over 2,000 years ago are still applicable today. And that tells you that, well, it's not just a fad. That's something that's real.
Love it. I love it. So all of these, as I think about the takeaways that you've itemized here, they're all representative of what I would describe a growth mindset, right? They're all representative of the fact that you're in pursuit of even better. You're in pursuit of continuous growth. You're in pursuit of continuing to lead well and continuing to recognize the realities that you described to set this up, that leadership is a learned skill, which means you keep learning it as you go, that it's omnipresent, right? It's everywhere. No matter where you go, there are always going to be opportunities to lead. So keep an eye out for those, and that it's critical. So keep honing those skills, because your ability to lead is going to be necessary somewhere. And the more you get better at it, the more able you'll be to lead in the moment when you're needed. It's yeah, really,
Exactly.
really lovely, really lovely. And
Exactly.
I love the transparency with which you, and the authenticity with which you bring your faith to the table, Brian. And we share that in common. And my listeners know that I'm it's no secret. It's no secret that I am a woman of strong faith, and my faith foundation is part of what charges me up, and what recharges me, and what anchors me and moves me forward. And so I thank you for being as transparent on that front as well.
Always be who you are.
That's right. That's right. So what's making you even better these days, Brian?
Oh, that's a really good question. Um, so what's making me better these days? I would say a couple different things. Number one, always getting new challenges with work. It doesn't matter where I am, there's always a challenge to be met. And that usually means stepping up and figuring out how to lead people in situations to get them to a better place. As long as businesses keep having problems to solve, I think I've got employment. Um, so on a more personal note, I got remarried earlier this year, and there's nothing to improve your husband skills like having a new wife. And I know we can put some humor on that, but at the same time, it's serious from a standpoint that living with somebody all the time, you know, you learn a lot about them, and they learn a lot about you, and you have a fresh set of eyes on you now. and they see things differently than your former spouse did, and so you get a different perspective, and it's a blessing at the end of the day, and you have to always remember that it's a blessing, and just make sure that you listen and make sure that you hear it differently than maybe you heard it from the other person. And so I'd say that's the other thing that's helping me sharpen my skills is just I have a loving wife that I love dearly, and just happy to have found someone again.
Oh, Brian, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yes.
Oh, well, I am grateful for your time, my friend. This has been such a joy to walk through this journey of leadership with you. And I know that our guests, our listeners are grateful for your time as well. If they want to reach out to you, I know that they can reach out to us and we'll happily connect them. But if there's if someone wants to reach out to you directly, is there a way that, do they find you on LinkedIn? Is that probably the best way to find you?
Yeah, I'm out on LinkedIn. That'd be the best way to reach out to me, please.
Okay. Fantastic. We'll have them reach out that way, or if they reach out to us, we'll connect them as well. So
Okay.
thank you, Brian, and to all of our listeners, thank you so much for making time to listen to with us today. And on behalf of all of us here at the Your Clear Next Step team, we hope the rest of your day is even better.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.